A long time ago, I was a Spotify person, like everyone else was. The student deal ran out, and I was like, okay, let's see what else there is. Because Spotify doesn't have a hi-fi tier, despite the fact that for the last 10 years, or at least like 6 years, they've been saying, oh yeah, we're going to do it. And they keep saying they're going to do it, and it's had about 5 different names, and it still hasn't existed yet. So I did this a few years ago, where I tried out all the streaming services to see all the features they had, and I essentially settled on Deezer because it's got a hi-fi tier, and slightly after I upgraded to that, they actually made the hi-fi tier the same price as the normal one. They didn't tell me that. I had to figure that one out and change my subscription. But anyway, so I spent 2 years on Deezer, and generally works quite nice. However, Spotify, being the juggernaut that they are, has kind of forced Deezer, and they've got smaller user base, but their smaller user base meant that, you know, they just kept with the basic normal features and the hi-fi, and it was good. Now they kind of, you know, they're trying to go down the route of, oh, we need to do all these like concerts and quizzes and like Deezer Wrapped, Spotify Wrapped clone thing. And they've spent more time doing that than actually making the service work. And so over time, and especially now that I've now got a vehicle that has Android Auto in it, I'm like, you know, I want to be able to use it in that. And in theory, it supports it. But the reliability is getting worse by X amount of time. And I was like, I've had 2 years or maybe even 3 years at this point of Deezer. Let's see what the market's like now. So, signed up to Spotify. Started a trial again. You know, if you've got loads of email addresses, you can do that. And the first thing that hit me with Spotify was it's pop music. It's always pop music, and they've added like stories, and they've added like videos, and like animated artwork, and they still don't have a hi-fi tier. And on the iPad that I have, that I was given this old iPad, it's kind of finished getting new features, but there's still security updates for it. So I'm like, I'll just put that on my desk, and I'll use that as a dedicated media player. And it runs slow. Like, Spotify used to work on an iPod Touch, and this iPod Touch had 512 meg of RAM. Now this iPad, that has infinitely more CPU and 8 times as much RAM, it just can't hack it. It's trying to do all these silly videos and lyrics and stuff, and it just ran really slowly. So I was like, well, that's kind of the only cool thing that Spotify really has is that you can it syncs your now playing state between your device, your phone, your iPad, and whatever, and you can fire music to which one of these things, and it all kind of works. But otherwise, wasn't feeling it. So okay, I tried some other ones. I got an iPad here. I'll try Apple Music. Apple Music, for at least the iPad that I have, is more reliable on my Android phone than on iOS.
Good.
And it also has the lovely benefit that it's a built-in app into iOS, which means that they can't update it unless you update iOS, which this iPad will not do. And crossover, where it kind of, or crossfade between the music, for some reason isn't in iOS 16. It was in previous ones, and it was in the latest ones. But Apple Music on iOS 16 doesn't have crossfade. And I was like, I swear it was in this menu. And I went to go and find some documentation, and it literally just says, if this feature does not show on your device, update your device. I can't. So that was kind of a bust. But they do have a hi-fi tier. So I did try and see what it was like. And in classic Apple fashion, it it's really weirdly migrated iTunes and my playlists over. So I ended up with either no history or anything, or I turn on whatever their confusingly named feature is that syncs with iCloud, and suddenly I have lots of playlists with things I can't play in them. So that wasn't very good. And as I say, it was less reliable on my iPad than it was on my Android phone. So that was a bit of a mess. So I went. I've got pre-existing knowledge of Amazon because my dad has it because he's got Prime, and that seems to decide to play more imitation or like cover music than actual real music. And I kind of fell, and I think their hi-fi tier you'd still have to upgrade for, and I'm like, eh. So I came back to Tidal. And I gave Tidal a go, and they have this interesting idea where you can either have a 30-day free trial, or you spend £2 and get a 2-month trial, which, we'll see what it's like. And compared to when I tried Tidal a couple of years ago, they've actually, like, the algorithm and the way that you find music, and now that they're getting rid of the MQA thing that was kind of like compressed lossless, but not really. It now just plays native FLACs. And the new onboarding system is really cool, and it does the Apple Music thing of showing you all these artists, and you can click an artist, and then it's got shows more artists like that, and you can click around. You end up with lots of music preloaded, and it plays nice on my iPad, and it plays nice on my mobile phone, on my Android phone. And then I try it in the car. And in the car, it doesn't work with Android Assistant or Google Assistant. So while you're driving, you sort of can't tell it to do anything.
Well,
it will either play what you were already playing before you got in the car, or you can go. It turns out it does have CarPlay, Android Auto support, and you can click into a menu and then click into another menu, and then you get a search bar which you can only speak into. And at that point, you can ask it to play things, and then it will give you a list that's generally what you asked for. It seemed fairly good at that, and then it will play it. And so I've generally kind of got the Tidal as my favourite. But yeah, it doesn't have Android Assistant, which is kind of annoying. And I had a lovely video I took the other day of it just not playing the track it said it was playing, which was good. And of course, when you go forward and then you go back to the track, it then plays the correct track. So it's just like, how hard is it to make a music player that can play music in the order that it will play? It says it will play the music. It seems like we've kind of lost the art of playing music, which is sad. And that's the story of streaming services and why they all suck.
So what you're saying here is, what we need is Winamp in your car.
Oh yeah, I also tried YouTube Music, which has a habit of finding songs that are just karaoke versions off YouTube. That were made on Windows Movie Maker at like 128 kilobit MP3. So that was immediately out of the running.
So interestingly, you talk about Spotify and its love for pop music, because while it may well be the case that I listen to more pop music than you, in fact that's probably the case, I feel like I've also over the years managed to train it more towards my very specific taste in pop music. So maybe it's a time thing, but yeah.
Maybe. I don't seem to remember it doing a very fancy onboarding thing, though. It just kind of jumped into it and went, you probably want this.
Tries to figure it out. So I'm still on Spotify. Cameron, out of the smorgasbord of streaming services that Matt presented, which ones do you use?
I'm an Apple Music user, and I always have been. I mean, what do you expect from me, really?
Yeah, fair. I did try Apple Music back when I got my first set of AirPods, the original generation AirPod Pros, and they were doing, it was either like a 3 or a 6 month trial. I mainly wanted to try it for all the Dolby Atmos stuff that they were doing with AirPods, which isn't real Atmos. We all know that. It's an emulation. But it was interesting that there were details in songs that I'd listened to many times before that I heard for the first time in the Atmos Master, but didn't really convince me to switch to it, and so I am still on Spotify.